boardroom, this is the business of esports. The worlds of gaming and esports are evolving every day faster than ever before. With YouGov's living data, you can probe into the real thoughts and behaviors of esports fans and gamers worldwide. If you're a team, a brand, an agency, or a rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. They're partners with the biggest names in esports and the biggest brands all around the world, driving compelling results every single day. Check out yougov.com/BOE and schedule a call with YouGov today. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports weekly news show / post podcast live stream. I am Paul the Prophet Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, the Honorable Judge Jimmy Baratta, Lindsay the Boss Poss, Jeff the Juice Cohen. For those of you who are new here, welcome. What we do is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. And best of all, we get to do it live with you guys. You get to get in our faces, challenge us, ask questions, all of the above. We encourage it. It's a safe place. This is a new time, by the way. So we're trying out a new time here. It's 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. It's 10:30 for Gulf Standard Time. So we're trying to reach more time zones. I know there were people in Australia before who couldn't listen to the show live. Hopefully now you can. So if you love this time, if you hate this time, please let us know. We're just testing it out. I'm not saying this is going to be permanent, but we want to see how it works out, how many of you guys show up. Matt says, new time, same great people. That's Matt, you summarized it extremely well. New time, same great people. How is everyone doing today? Lindsay, how you doing?
I am so excited for this new time. I feel like I'm so much more awake. This is going to be good.
You like this?
Oh, I love this. I'm not on my best at 8 p.m.
I think I agree. I like this time. I'm interested to see how chat is. I think people might be more lively. We'll see.
Yeah, I feel like it's like doing a webinar, right? So for people who are at work or whatever, this is a great opportunity to like kick back for an hour, get some, gaming and esports knowledge and banter, and then go back to your workday. I think that's how I'm looking at it. Adam says, I highly approve of this time, Adam. Thank you. Appreciate you being here as always. And so I'm glad. We want feedback. We want to know if you guys hate the time, love the time. You have to let us know, because we're going to make a decision in the next few weeks. We're do we keep trying this? Do we move it back to the original time? We want to make sure we're doing what you guys want and what's best for you guys. So Adam says, this is new. Adam, it is new. But again, wouldn't be the live stream without Adam R and Adam D. I remember now I have to specify. And so appreciate both of you guys being here. Guys, I just want to tease before I get into, sorry, I had a bit of a brain fart there. I want to tease the podcast this week. Incredible guest on the podcast. We had the very famous Knut. And for those who don't know Knut, he's a Twitch streamer, incredibly popular Twitch streamer. One of the big ones, one of the bigger IRL Twitch streamers. In other words, he puts a camera on his back in a backpack and walks around and films basically his entire life. He's also a bodybuilder, like a world-class bodybuilder, and very, very fascinating guy. Talked a lot about streaming, the difficulties, the upside, the secrets to success, what he thinks of the different platforms. A lot of great conversation all around streaming and entertainment and his success there. So definitely don't miss that. It's a really great episode. I mean, I'm a bit biased, but it's a really great episode. So definitely look forward to that. Adam says, I'd suggest if you can get the podcast guest to join in an after show, then do an after show, but definitely do this time always. Adam R., that is such a good idea. And, we did that last week with Chris O'Coins, and it worked really well. Like, Chris was so great on the live stream. I don't know if you managed to catch most of it, but
he really was. I thought we were gonna kick Lindsay out for good. I thought she might have gotten Wally pipped.
Not a chance.
Not a chance. Adam D says, just got done listening to last week's episode with Chris. It was great. Yeah, Chris was fantastic. I think it's a great idea to maybe try and bring the guest as much as possible on the live stream after the fact. I definitely think we should do that. So love the idea, and we are definitely going to try that. Adam R. says, if Lindsay leaves, I'll riot. Don't tempt me.
The people have spoken.
If Lindsay leaves, I would riot too. So, I mean, no one's replacing Lindsay. There you go. All right, guys, let's jump into some news. We have lots of news to get to this week. I want to start with Overwatch 2. Overwatch 2 in the news, and I think it was interesting news. I don't know how much of a discussion, how deep we're going to get into this, but the headline at least caught my attention here. And the headline is Overwatch 2 will get rid of loot boxes. As the game transitions to a free-to-play seasonal content model, the controversial loot award system will be replaced with an in-game shop. So in Overwatch 2, it says loot boxes are no more. It's going to be free-to-play, and there will be an in-game shop where you can buy cosmetics and things like that. So no loot boxes like they had in Overwatch 1. Now, it says there will be a battle pass. The developers declined to go into detail about what the battle pass will feature, but there will be a battle pass and an in-game shop. And they talk a little bit about in the article about sort of the background of the backlash against Diablo Immortal and how that has been structured, where the pay-to-win structure there. I'm curious what you guys think of Overwatch 2 coming out and saying we're not going to do loot boxes, because loot boxes were the primary, if not basically the only form of monetization in Overwatch 1. So this is a pretty dramatic shift. I'm curious what you guys think of the shift and what you think drove the shift.
Well, if you're Overwatch, I think monetization is a secondary concern for you right now, right? Your primary concern is anyone going to even play this game? Because it's been so long, it's been demanded for so long, and there are so many great competing titles out there now that they're not as dominant as they once were. So I love the shift to free-to-play. It opens up your game to a wider audience. There are so many kids out there that can't afford a $60, $70, even a $40 or $30 game. So going free to play to me is always a great thing. You want your IP in front of as many eyeballs as possible. Otherwise, there's nothing to monetize in the first place. And it's just kind of funny and unfortunate that that's where they're at. But it's a good move, I think, for the Overwatch community. And I don't know if it's a Hail Mary or something that drastic. I don't think so. But it's definitely telling, right? Because we had this conversation a week ago and probably the week before that. What was it? It was the Strauss Zelnick story where they were actually raising the prices of their games, right? And that's
Call of Duty.
Oh, right. It was Call of Duty. Excuse me. And so that's the difference here, right? That we're looking at is Call of Duty, immensely popular game. Tons of people still playing it, even though I personally am frustrated by it and left. But then when you compare it to Overwatch, which is in a very different scenario, taking the opposite. Really interesting to see one parent company taking both routes, right, and kind of A/B testing which is going to be the most successful. But I think it kind of just proves that it's not one or the other, but more of a matter of circumstance.
Do you guys think that this signals that Activision Blizzard's concerned about how many people are going to play the game?
Yeah.
I don't think I would go that broad to draw. I mean, they probably are concerned, but I don't know that I would necessarily draw that conclusion just from this. I think this is a move that's kind of been coming in the industry a lot more and more, where we've seen a move really away from loot boxes towards like the battle pass system. Fortnite did that. Apex Legends did that. They still may use a little bit of loot box mechanics, but it's largely that battle pass system that drives the monetization versus like one-off or pay-to-win type loot box style mechanics. So I think it's more that broadly than anything else. Yeah.
Lindsay, you were going to say something.
Oh yeah, when you first were reading this story, I thought, okay, who cares? Nobody likes this game anyway. So I suppose my sort of hot take is that loot boxes or no loot boxes, this doesn't really matter, that people are disappointed in Overwatch 2 and that Activision didn't do the type of pivot it needed to save this franchise in the first place. So yes, I think they're concerned about player base.
But guys, like, doesn't this feel a little bit inconsistent to you? Like last week we had the discussion about Call of Duty raising the price by $10, right? And the conclusion there seemed to be something to the effect of, we know people are going to buy Call of Duty anyways, right? And so you can raise it $10, $15, whatever. People are still going to pay it. That was sort of, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of the conclusion we all came to. With Overwatch, it's maybe a little bit different story, right? There's definitely not as much. My belief around Overwatch is there's a hardcore group of people still playing Overwatch 1 who are going to play Overwatch 2. So why not take the same attitude of, well, the people who are going to play Overwatch 2 are going to play Overwatch 2, so we should charge $50 for it or $30 for it anyways, right? Like, why make it free to play if you know that there's a player base that's going to adopt your game anyways? And, the only reason I see for the change... Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Isn't the single player still going to be... I think what they're doing is basically separating the multiplayer and the single player, which kind of makes sense if you think you make the multiplayer free to play and then monetize it with microtransactions. So you kind of, like Jimmy said, broaden the base, bring as many people into the top of the funnel as possible. Plus, you get those network effects. You don't want to be a multiplayer game that doesn't have enough players, so people start dropping out because they can't find matches. And then they're going to still charge, I believe, for the story missions and the PvE modes. I believe that was the take that they're going, or the route that they're going down, which I think actually makes sense. It's a bit of like the opposite of the Warzone approach, where Warzone started with the free, the paid game, then shifted to free to play. It's kind of the opposite. They're going to start with free to play and go to the paid.
It's an interesting point. It's sort of consistent with COD, though, where the single player game's paid and the multiplayer battle royale is free to play. Maybe that's the consistency. Let me just get caught up on comments here. Matt says, how can you not like this for Overwatch 2? Isn't it possible that this solves all the issues people were talking about when the beat first came out? Making it free to play seems really smart. Just don't make it like Diablo Immortal, like you said. I mean, in-game store, I think, is definitely going to get less backlash than loot boxes, right? Like, just on a apples-to-apples comparison, if all other things are equal, better to be able to buy the cosmetics you want than a loot box you don't know what you're going to get. Does anyone disagree with that?
No.
But, I mean, clearly, this is better. It's just interesting that they make a whole announcement out of it. I don't know. This is where I'm trying to read into, right? Like, what are they trying to accomplish with the PR around it? Adam says, probably a Microsoft direction. There's not a single first-party Microsoft game released in the last couple of years that I can think of that is still doing loot boxes. They've all moved to stores. I wonder also what are the economics of loot boxes versus stores in terms of average spend per user. I don't know if any of you guys know or have seen data around that. Jeff, maybe you have. On
I
the
have
mobile
not
side,
seen
or-
data. I'm guessing you see more people spend in the store, like a greater percentage of the overall population will spend, but maybe the dollars spent is lower because with the loot boxes, you get those whales that like just have an item they need to get, so they'll spend $1,000 to get through, to get it. Versus the store, maybe you have more people spend, like a greater percentage of people, but they spend lower because they just buy the one item they want. Just my hypothesis.
It's an interesting one. It sounds reasonable and plausible. Matt says, like, it feels like they're desperately trying to not make another Diablo Immortal, which seems like a good idea if you ask me. I mean, I did see somewhere that Diablo Immortal made like $25 million so far. Not that seems like such a huge amount in the grand scheme of Activision Blizzard, but maybe they're not the. I mean, Activision Blizzard has always been kind of deaf to the backlash against them, anyways. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a reaction. Adam D says, I think they're worried about the game being popular in the player base, but they're basically implementing the system within Call of Duty. Yeah, I think Adam D, that's basically the conclusion here, that it's consistent with Call of Duty, which is maybe what they're trying to standardize, like give multiplayer away, monetize through in-game stores, and charge for single-player campaigns. But I also agree that they are worried about the player base. Adam R says, the same reason they made the Halo Infinite multiplayer free-to-play, they need people playing. This is true. For multiplayer to succeed, you cannot have 15-minute queue times, or whatever they would be if maybe you gated it with a $30 charge. Guys, I just want to put this next to, hang on, I don't have the story queued up, but I wanted to put it next to another story. Sorry, 1 second, because I don't think this plays into it that much, but I do think it plays into it maybe a little bit. And I was watching ASMONGOLD stream, in fact, and he was reacting to a video. Let me bring this up here. So the story here is U.S. Senator Ted Cruz agrees to roundtable meeting with ASMONGOLD on outlawing pay-to-win microtransactions. So ASMONGOLD has been like incredibly outspoken on how Diablo Immortal basically needs to die, that it's the worst thing that's ever happened to gaming, and I agree with him. And somehow this made it to that he made contact supposedly with U.S. Senator Ted Cruz's office to talk about making pay-to-win microtransactions. And in fact, when I saw Ted Cruz's reaction or comment on this, he expanded it to loot boxes. So pay-to-win microtransactions and loot boxes illegal. So supposedly ASMONGOLD's talking to Ted Cruz about putting legislation to make pay-to-win microtransactions and loot boxes illegal. Now, I put it here because obviously we just talked about Overwatch 2 getting rid of loot boxes. Do you think there's concern from any of the big players that maybe loot boxes will get regulated more heavily in the US and they need to change now? Lindsay, maybe, I don't know if you have thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely should be. Legislation and laws in general are historically extremely slow to move, but can be, I suppose, quite damaging or quite harsh when they eventually go through. I don't think that there's any justification for needing to immediately fix this, considering I went to an FTC hearing on loot boxes like 3 years ago, and obviously nothing has particularly changed since then. I think it would be wise to move away from that as a monetization model in general, just because I think that there's a lot of pushback from fans as well. So I don't think that this is like a they need to do right now, like all irons in the fire kind of alarm. But I do think that it would be wise to move away from that and find other forms of monetization for several reasons, one of them being the potential for legislation down the road.
Any other thoughts, guys, on this?
I think I agree with everything Lindsay said. I doubt that this came, though, as a result of the Ted Cruz ASMONGOLD thing. It's it's too quick, right? Like these companies like this don't make decisions that quickly, right? Like it's not like they change the entire monetization design of this multi-$100 million game they've been building based on like one tweet from Ted Cruz. Like it's just not, that wouldn't be how it would go down in reality.
Yeah, it's something that you see in traditional sports also, right? Like the top athletes are going to use their voice and their status to try and implement change, or at least to try and make headlines. But the thing here is, I mean, what's Ted Cruz going to do at the end of the day that hasn't already been discussed? Like Lindsay said 3 years ago, is he just getting publicity from this demographic, right? And kind of taking advantage of a hot topic where you can get in front of new eyeballs. I don't want to criticize him or any political candidate too much on the show. It's just, gamers don't like to feel exploited, fundamentally, is what we're talking about here. You have a very well-known gamer that's very vocal against that. And is this going to lead to any true change remains the question. And I don't think there's an answer for that, is kind of how I'm looking at this. So it's a fun story. It's cool to see the names attached to it, but I just don't have a lot of hope, I think, for anything immediate.
Okay, I want to just take one poll here, and I want to ask chat also. Probability that loot boxes get regulated, and I probably mean banned, in the US in the next 2 years. Where would you guys put that probability?
0.
0. Jeff says 0. Lindsay? You're muted.
She's with me. She couldn't
I'm
bear
with
for
Jeff.
everyone.
Yeah.
She couldn't bear saying that out loud.
Jimmy?
Yeah. Not within 2 years. Too short.
0. You also 0.
Yeah.
3 zeros. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean,
0%?
That statement, it says a lot more about my beliefs about the U.S. political economy and ability for them to get anything done versus like what I really believe about loot boxes or should they be banned or anything like that. It's just like we can't pass anything in this country that is remotely sensible. So it's very unlikely you're going to get, enough people on board to do that or not do that. It's just like it's going to grind to a halt like everything else. And it's not an issue that enough people care about that people are going to take it up and champion. It's just not that important to the average voter.
Fair enough.
At all.
Adam R says, wait, which announcement came first, the ASMONGOLD or Overwatch? I think technically the ASMONGOLD one came first. The Overwatch announcement was a few days later. So read into that as you will. Kevin says, hasn't EU law taken aim at loot boxes already? I think the Netherlands did already. Yes, Kevin, they did. But I don't know if there was a hard ban on them. It was more aimed at stopping kids from gambling. That has always been sort of the way that most governments have tried to sort of go after loot boxes.
Although there was a big recent, and I think we covered this a couple weeks back, where I think it was Belgium, basically their version of the Supreme Court effectively said that loot boxes were not gambling. So it was like a big step in the wrong direction for the anti-loot box regulators. So.
Yeah. Michael says this is new schedule change. Michael, yes, as I mentioned at the top of the show, if you missed it, we're trying out a new time. We're trying to reach more time zones. If you love it, if you hate it, let us know. But so far the feedback has been good. So let us know if you hate it and you prefer doing this at night or in the morning or whenever. Ryan says Asmongold, Ted Cruz, loot boxes. What a time to be alive. I mean, it's fun that it's in part of the conversation, right? But to Lindsay's point, feels like it's been part of the conversation for a few years now. I disagree with you guys that it's 0%. I actually think in the next 2 years, it's probably like a 50-50 toss-up. Truly like a 50-50 toss-up. That I think the whole idea of kids gambling, eventually people decide to do something about it, but I don't know. What do I know? Adam R says Streamlabs got called out by regular people on Twitter for copying other companies, and within a day they issued a statement saying, "Oh, hey, we messed up. We'll fix it." I mean, Adam R, you're implying that Overwatch 2 came out with this announcement after the Asmongold thing. I agree that the decisions there are being made that quickly and that haphazardly, because they sort of have always been made that haphazardly at Activision Blizzard. So I do think they may be connected, but I think it's more likely that they're just worried about the player base, is my guess. Kevin says 0. Wow, Kevin agrees with all of you guys. All of you guys think 0%. 0. Like no chance. Impossible. Adam D says 10%. That feels a little more reasonable to me. At least some chance. Kevin says, of all the things to focus on, LOL, come on now. Kevin, we got to get rid of pay to win in Diablo Immortal. This is the most important issue facing America today. Adam R says 2 years, 0, 5 years, depends on who has majority in Congress. So Adam R, I think you agree with Jeff on this one, that it's more a statement of the political system.
Is it like not to get into a political conversation, but which side bans it? Like, I don't, like the right is all about free enterprise. Were you really going to ban, microtransactions in video games? That seems very like conservatism. And then the left, like I don't know, like who I just don't know whose political issue, like who makes hay from it. I'm just not sure.
I feel like
it's ASMONGOLD's political issue. Come on.
I know. Until gamers have
president.
Control of Congress.
Yeah.
A one platform candidate, ASMONGOLD, getting
Right.
He'd have a lot of voters.
Well, I mean, like, I guess the family values part, you're going to get a weird group. You're going to get the, like, anti-tech folks and the, like, extreme family values folks. And it's going to be a strange unity of people that have nothing to do with Democrat and Republican. If anything.
Kevin says, what are the chances California takes aim at it? I would assume Activision Blizzard is a big political donor in California, I would think, right? Like, I would assume they have political influence, or they're lobbying there, and they would not want that. Considering, I mean, almost all their mobile stuff is loot boxes still, right? Like most of the King stuff is all loot boxes, basically, or some version of pay-to-win microtransactions. So I would assume they would be pretty wholeheartedly against it. Adam D says, slow clap for Jeff. Matt says, no way will LOOTBOX be banned in the US, especially since the country is starting to loosen up its gambling laws. That's a good point. That's actually a good point. All right, maybe I'm not 50-50. Maybe I'm 10%. Maybe I'm with Adam D on this, saying 10%. I don't think it's 0.
That could actually cut both ways. I mean, that would be state by state, which is how the gambling laws are being done. But you could see some element of when a state is legalizing gambling, they actually tighten other areas where it's like, they decide to legalize sports betting, but in part of the bill that's negotiated, they end up banning these sort of like mobile microtransactions or pseudo gambling, if you call it. I don't think that'll happen, but you could make that argument.
Guys, let's move on. Let's talk about Team Liquid in the news. And for those of you who watch all our content or consume all our content, this is something William, the Professor Collis's latest episode of Office Hours. He touches on this topic. We're going to talk about Team Liquid here, but if you haven't watched an episode of Office Hours with the Professor, go do that. We put it in the same feed as all the other Business of Esports stuff. It's really great. He does a deep dive once a week on one specific topic, and this week was on Team Liquid and Honda. So let me bring this up here. The story was Team Liquid and Honda announced naming rights deal. So Team Liquid announced a significant partnership with car manufacturer Honda. The new multi-year deal will see Honda secure naming rights to the organization's League of Legends, LCS, and Academy teams, so they will compete in the LCS under the name Team Liquid Honda. It'll be on their jerseys, all the usual stuff. And they've been teamed up since 2019. So Honda's not new to Team Liquid, but this naming rights deal is new. I'm curious what you guys think of the team naming rights stuff. And I ask, from a business standpoint, right? Like who, the question I usually ask, like who's the bigger winner here, right? Is this better for Team Liquid or better for Honda, without knowing how much Team Liquid actually got for this? But the second question I have is, why don't we see this more in North American traditional sports but it seems to be getting more accepted in esports, right? We saw TSM FTX, now Team Liquid Honda. Like, why don't we see the H&M New York Yankees or whatever, or like, you know what I mean? Like, why is that not?
Well, I can
why
answer
is
that
that
one
not
real
a
quick
thing?
because they don't need as much money as the esports teams need because they have broadcast deals. The big problem in esports is that there's no substitute for the massive TV contracts that we see in really pretty much every other sport. That doesn't happen in esports. We've seen some deals, nothing nearly of the magnitude. And the big question, I feel like we've been talking for 5 years, the industry has about, hey, these big TV contracts are coming. That's where the catch-up opportunity will be between traditional sports and esports. Hasn't really happened. My sort of like working hypothesis is that there's just too much free content out there on platforms like Twitch and YouTube and stuff like that, where it's a good substitute, right? If you think about basketball, there's no great substitute for watching like the Lakers versus the Bulls or the Knicks or whoever. Whereas esports, there's a pretty good substitute. If you just go on Twitch and watch, who pick your favorite streamer, like that's a pretty good substitute for an esports match if you're not a hardcore fan of a team. So I think it keeps the rights down. So that's the big problem. So to get back to your initial question, these teams need money, so they're willing to literally sell their own name.
Yeah, I want to jump in here. I think I think Jeff hit a lot of it on its head. That one, the lack of, or rather the sheer amount of content where it makes it less of a competitive product, and also what the teams need, right, in traditional sports versus esports. I had this conversation about this exact story with a marketing representative for another very well-known global car manufacturing brand, and we both came to the same conclusion in that this was a pretty standard partnership. It was pretty basic. There was nothing that really excited either of us. Seemed to create more value for Team Liquid, I think, more than Honda here, just because Honda is one of those global. I mean, not that Team Liquid's small by any means, but it's not Honda's status. It doesn't have Honda's history or reach. But at the end of the day, it's like what is this? There was an opportunity for Honda, who's spending marketing dollars for this brand deal, where Honda could have been a little bit more engaged. They could have created more content. They could have gone directly to the motorsport side of competitive gaming, which is a really interesting place. I mean, the group of us saw the esports F1 activation in Austin, and that's just one element of it, where there were lines in Austin, Texas, for people to compete and hop on these VR machine, or not VR, but those simulator rigs. So it seems like not a missed opportunity for Honda, but really not as meaningful as it could have been, where Honda could have done something, again, on the motorsport side of things, or just more than just like, here's a bunch of money, put our name on your t-shirt, not that this isn't big news, that it's not a great win for esports because it is a non-endemic brand, like the Nissan Phase deal that we had seen. But it's not unique, and I don't want to bag it for that or rag on it for that, but I don't know, maybe it's because we cover all the top news stories and all the trending things every single week that we're ahead of the curve over here, I would like to think. But you would hope for something a little bit more, even though this is still a win for esports. It's not the evolution that I would hope to see.
Guys, I just want to hang on. I want to read this. Adam D says, good on them for the partnership, but Liquid Honda is awful in my opinion. I mean, this is where I sort of wanted to take this. Doesn't this feel incredibly lazy? Incredibly lazy as an activation? Because I get why a brand wants to put their name on a stadium, right? Because there's probably 100,000 cars that pass by the biggest stadiums every single day. And, if you see, TD Bank or whatever up in lights on the stadium, or Gillette or whatever, that has value because you're getting eyeballs from just the people who pass by this giant thing every single day. The reality is there anyone who's actually going to call this like Team Liquid Honda? Like, are the casters going to call them Team Liquid Honda? Are the the fans going to refer to them as Team Liquid Honda? Probably not, right? This is still probably just Team Liquid. And so I don't know what Honda really gets with naming rights. I feel like there were 100 other better ways to activate with the team to get people excited about the Honda brand. This feels lazy to me. I don't know.
What I will say, I agree with you. What I will say is, especially with a non-endemic brand, maybe they're just dipping their toe in the water. You know, we did have Steve Aronstedt on the show a couple months ago. He spoke to the incredibly high, I think it was 100% return rate from their sponsors. Wasn't it? I thought it was 100, where the sponsors that they work with come back every single year because of that relationship. This is the first relationship that Honda's having with Liquid, so maybe it's the start of something. But to your point, I'm not out here saying Team TSM FTX, right? So what is this accomplishing really, other than Honda taking a dip in a new field? Which is why I said, you know, it seemed like a missed opportunity for something.
It's hard to say they're dipping their toe. It's almost like they skipped all the steps and that they're going for the whole enchilada. It's like, you know, they could have started with a simple like jersey patch. Instead, they're like, no, change your name. Like that's literally about as deep as you could go. Like, if you think about it, like literally change the name. Though I do agree with.
But
Paul,
it's also the lowest value thing, right? Like if Honda tomorrow came and said, hey, Business of Esports, here's millions of dollars. We want you to change your name to Business of Esports Honda, right? Like, is anyone going to call the show that, right? Are people going to be like, oh my God, I tune in to the Business of Esports Honda live stream every week? No, people are still going to call it Business of Esports. There are probably better ways we can get Honda's brand in front of our audience. And I think there are better ways Team Liquid can connect Honda and their audience, more creative ways than just renaming.
So I think that's absolutely correct. To be fair, they did mention, I think in one of the articles I read, they're doing some additional stuff. Like they're going to have a lounge that's called the Honda Lounge. I'm sure the jerseys will have Honda. I imagine the players will drive around. Like there's probably other stuff besides just the name. But I think you're right. There are better ways. Like there are more creative ways to create engagement than just like slapping a name that, you're right, most people will not say. Now it will be on the jerseys, it will be on the scoreboard, it will be on the press kits, and all the articles will obviously have to say Honda Liquid. So it'll be there. But like when we're talking about it day to day in the vernacular, like we're not going to probably call it Honda Team Liquid. Although maybe we will now because we've had this conversation. Who knows? We'll do it ironically.
You're all missing the point here. Liquid Honda evokes so many emotions. It's whimsical. It's imaginative. It gets you going. It makes you laugh. I think it's great. I'm going to be imagining Liquid Hondas all day, actually.
All day.
No, but I actually, in the absence of enormous broadcast rights deals, I love seeing things like this go through, and I'm happy for Team Liquid to get a sponsor on board, hopefully show them the wide world of esports, maybe have them sponsor something else and keep money flowing into the industry. So all in all, a good thing. Just hilarious name.
I love some of these comments, Lindsay, to your point here. Adam R says, I would hate if my Honda was made of liquid. I mean,
really hard to drive.
It does kind of sound weird. Adam D says, having Honda on jerseys similar to branding in the EU soccer teams is 100 times better than changing the name to Liquid Honda. I mean, to be fair, I think they do have the patches. They did say they were going to have the names on the jersey, but agreed. Liquid Honda is weird. Adam R says the Honda Lounge, where the PCs are as powerful as a lawnmower. This is, guys, you should have done this activation. Chat should have done this activation. Adam R says Honda Civic SI themed gaming chairs. I mean, gaming chairs already are car like racing bucket seats, so that's not a stretch, Adam. Kevin says it seems like esports is following the European jersey style with branding included like soccer, rugby, Euro basketball. Meanwhile, the US has been slow to get there. I mean, to Jeff's point, the US maybe doesn't need to go there, right? Like the big North American sports teams, because they just don't need the money.
They are themselves the brand. I mean, they are doing some jersey patch sponsorships like in the NBA, but it's like they don't need to sell their naming rights because they just make so much money that it would cheapen their overall brand. What is interesting is that we don't see more, and maybe we do see this a little bit, but like I was thinking of the analogy like golf. Like every tournament seems to be sponsored by somebody. You have like the Honda Classic, which is why I was thinking about this. The RBC, the Barclays, like every event seems to have like a title sponsor. And it really works because then the whole week you're hearing about, hey, who's winning the Barclays tournament or who's winning the Honda Classic. Like it's just, I think it actually might be better than this. So I'm surprised we don't see more of that in esports. We see it a little bit.
I've had funny thoughts about that exact thing, Jeff, with golf, because there's one tournament which is called the Waste Management Open, and every time I hear it, I go, "What a horrible name for a tournament!" Like I get that it's the corporate sponsor, but it's a horrible name for a tournament. Like this is horrible branding, but maybe it works because I always remember it. And it's it's a big golf tournament, but I don't know if naming anything after the sponsor helps the sponsor really. I'm not convinced. Let's put it that way. Guys, before we get to the next story, I just want to say a quick word. This live stream very generously sponsored by YouGov. If you're working in or around the gaming space at all, you're looking to reach esports fans, the gaming audience at all, you need to be talking to YouGov. They produce something called live data. So it's data that's constantly being updated. It's incredibly powerful, helps to make really great decisions. I would not go alone. I would not try and get into the gaming space or reach the gaming audience at all unless you've talked to people like YouGov first. So if you need to reach them, you can reach any of us directly and we can put you in contact with them. Or you can go to yougov.com/BOE. In fact, go there anyways. I'm going to put it in all the chats that I can. yougov.com/BOE. There's some free data there. There's some videos from past live streams we've done with YouGov. And so there's a lot of interesting things there. Go check it out. Go show YouGov some love. We really appreciate their support.
Is it true, Paul, that YouGov offered $100 million to change the name of the live stream to the YouGov Business of Esports live stream? But we turned it down.
It's true, and we did turn it down. It is true. Those I can confirm those rumors. Adam R says waste management seems appropriate for golf. Okay, totally unnecessary shot at golf.
Okay, that was my thought when you said that, though. I'm like, well, if it fits.
Totally unnecessary shot at golf. All right, guys, let's talk about a subject where maybe we were all wrong. I don't know if it's one of those cases, or maybe we were all right.
That doesn't. There you go.
This could go both ways. And it's about Netflix games. And finally, some data coming out. This is from Sensor Tower. Netflix games reach 13 million downloads. So according to the report, Netflix games have generated 13 million downloads globally since launching them last year. The most popular month for the platform in terms of downloads was December, which had 2.3 million. And this is incidentally when their second most popular game launched, Asphalt Extreme. They've been doing this less than a year. Everything launched last November. There's 24 titles, more on the horizon. We've talked about it, including a Stranger Things title. What do you guys think of this number? 13 million downloads, 2.3 million in their best month. Netflix games a success? Not really. Were we right? Were we wrong? Jeff, you have thoughts on this?
Just for context, so the company I work for, Homa Games, which maybe you may or may not have heard of, in the last month had 37 million downloads. So downloads in mobile gaming are not it's not always equivalent, So I guess that's just to give a little bit of
16 times as much as Netflix's best month.
Yeah. So it's always it's yeah. I mean, I would say that's
you're basically calling Netflix games a nothing burger.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I still maintain I don't think they're doing enough. And now, to be fair, they're probably not spending a ton on user acquisition yet. You have to be a Netflix subscriber. You have to be in the Netflix app to find them. So, there's a lot of reasons why 13 million may actually be a good start for Netflix, and they may be better or worse than they expected. But just off the top, 13 million to me is not like a wow, this is, taking over the world number.
Jimmy, Lindsay, any thoughts? Maybe, I mean, in a different context, do you guys know offhand Netflix's total subscriber numbers?
I Googled it immediately. Yeah. So it's about 222 million. So 13 is about 0.5% of their total user base making a download, which I still think is pretty on par with their strategy. Like they're not releasing huge. I still feel like they're in the early phases. I think it does worse if the Stranger Things game does poorly, then I think they need to rethink it. But I think so far they haven't released a massive. I mean, they've released like the Queen's Gambit and some other like decent Netflix IP, but they haven't released a game that's like nearly as popular as one of their most popular shows, like Stranger Things. So I still feel like they're sort of dipping their toe in, and maybe Stranger Things is more of the game that makes the plunge.
So, I mean, are you guys concluding that too early? Because I know, Jeff, the context you put this in sort of paints Netflix's gaming efforts in a bad light here. But like, do you agree that with Lindsay that maybe it's too early to call, or
I think it's definitely too early. It's definitely too early, and I have been critical of Netflix, but that comparison was more just to give scale than to say like, haha, Netflix, you're doing so poorly, because we don't know what they're optimizing for yet, right? It may be all about retention. So those 13 million people, they may have some estimate of, okay, now we've gotten them to stick around Netflix for an extra month, so that's worth $12. So boom, we just made $200 million based on that calculation. We don't know that maybe of those 12 million, 2 million of them were not Netflix subscribers previously, and they joined the service to play the Netflix game. So, oh my God, that would be like amazing if they made 2 million new subscribers. I doubt either of those things is the case, but I guess the point is without that extra context of like what they're optimizing for, we clearly can't say whether this is like a success or failure completely yet.
That clarification I think was super helpful, Jeff, and I didn't take it in a negative way when you shared your own insights. I thought that was like, wow, okay, so this is the higher end of the spectrum that we're weighing against, and you provided excellent context. What I will say is that the fact that it's even up for debate to me shows that it's successful, because if it was anything less and if it was an instant failure, we would just be branding it as an instant failure. Look at this, it barely cleared 2 million or 5 million downloads. The fact that it did over 10 million and we're actually at 13, I think that's pretty impressive. It's a start, and now we have one data point to talk about, and we'll see where, like Jeff just said, we'll see where they take it and where the next release or what those next figures are. But honestly, I think if it were a failure, we would more easily classify it as that. The fact that there's even a question about it, to me, indicates that it's at least successful in its own right, and there will be more discussion to be had around it.
Adam, let me just read the comments here. Adam R says there's a small percentage of games based on films, shows that have done well, but the ones that are done well do really well. So it's a risk, but it could be high reward. I mean, that's true, right? Like Stranger Things could be incredibly successful given how popular the show is, but it could also be a horrible game, right? Just because it's using Stranger Things IP doesn't guarantee success, as we've I think discussed many times. Chris says, hey Chris, last week's guest on this live stream. Chris, by the way, everyone has said how amazing you were both on the podcast episode and on the live stream, and how much they love the show with you. It says 0.5%. That's about the penetration of esports fans to video games. So chalk it up as a win. All right. Okay. Taking a shot at esports. Kevin says 13% of 220 million is over 28 million. Where's the 13%?
I think the 13 was the million downloads, not percent.
Yeah, 13 million downloads. And again, where the 0.5% assumes each download was from
5% too. Yeah, it's 5%. My decimal places were off.
5% is assuming each individual download was from a separate Netflix user, right? Because you could have one Netflix user download 3 games, and therefore it would be a smaller percentage of the total Netflix user base or viewer base. Matt says you have to imagine Netflix is happy with this. Why else would they release these download numbers? I mean, we don't know that they released them. I don't think the article said it was. This was from a third-party report. How they're getting the data, I'm not sure, but this wasn't a PR fluff piece from Netflix, that's for sure. Matt says it seems easier to make a successful show out of a game than to make a successful game out of a show. Do you guys all agree with that? Anyone disagree?
Let's see how the Queen's Gambit chess game does. It just launched. We just talked about it. So no, I'm not sure, Matt. That's always the age-old question, right? Is how this IP is applied and where it is where it has its strongest start. Shows are hard to make too. You know, games aren't the only. I think we're biased here because we're all gaming, related or gaming centric. But shows are very hard to do. I mean, look at Halo. That was not a great show. So I think it's more about the team. It's hard to,
historically, the trope was like taking games and making movies out of them was like a disaster. Like it never worked. I think in the last 3 years, we've seen a lot of examples of games being turned into shows that have worked. So maybe that is not necessarily the case anymore. But historically, I think it was always like it always failed when you tried to make a movie out of a game.
Chris says, thanks for the kind words. Love the new time. Chris, that feedback is really important. Thank you. We really want to know if you guys like this new time, as I mentioned. So please continue letting us know, even if it's in messages after the fact, if you're listening to this even after the fact, and maybe you're usually here live, let us know. Adam R says The Witcher is the exception, not the rule. True, but it's a strong example. It's a strong sort of thing to point to, and you could look at League and Arcane. I mean, TV shows that come from games seem to have done pretty well recently. All right, guys, I want to get to a couple final stories here, and this is RAZER in the news. RAZER. There's a bit of a twist on this one. The headline here is gaming hardware giant RAZER's venture arm leads $4 million investment in Singapore crypto payment startup. So this is Z Ventures. It's the venture arm of RAZER, $4 million funding round in AAA. It's a crypto payment startup based in Singapore. So basically, it says, I want to read the statement from the chief strategy officer at RAZER, where he says, AAA is a clear leader in crypto payments, an area of interest and relevance to us in the gaming space. We look forward to the strategic partnership with them, accelerating their growth and adoption by leveraging on our existing ecosystem of hardware, software, and services. And the idea is what AAA does is it allows companies and e-commerce platforms like RAZER has, or game developers, to accept payments in crypto. So I don't know what you guys want to make of this. You know, I always like following what the hardware companies are doing, and especially when they're doing different things here. This could be just as simple as RAZER, wants to be able to sell keyboards and headsets and get paid in Bitcoin. But I'm wondering if you think if there's any tinfoil hat theories here or thoughts on where RAZER might be going with this, because I do think it's different. I have not seen any other hardware company make a move like this. What do you think is the thinking here for RAZER, and how does this play out? Jimmy, I don't know if you have thoughts, or Lindsay, go ahead.
I was just going to say my most kind of tinfoil hat pie in the sky theory is that they'll start acting as an arbiter. Like they'll create like a B2B software as a service for gaming companies to be able to accept payments through this company. They don't typically do software as a service, so that would be kind of a huge step outside of their normal. But if you're talking about actual products, then that's the only thing I could think of that Razer could potentially sell. But yeah, that's a theory.
So Razer actually has a division called Razer Gold, which handles payments for games and entertainment platforms. I don't think it's one of their more advertiser known verticals, but I think it has little to do, if other than it uses its own software for their own payments of their gaming peripherals. I think it has little to do with the Razer that we're all familiar with. And then you guys might also be familiar with Razer or Respawn by Razer, right? Which is kind of like their gum that they did in partnership, and some of their other energy supplements and things of that nature to compete with G Fuel. So Razer kind of doing a lot of different things here under a couple different umbrellas. And I have less experience with Razer Gold. I've talked to some people over there, and I'm excited to learn more. But I think this is a fit for that. And maybe they're just looking to add crypto capabilities for some of their B2B, I think, services that they're offering under the Razer Gold vertical. Either way, interesting time to get into crypto. Probably something that's been months in the making, and then unfortunate timing on the press release with the turmoil going on over there. But if you believe in the long-term viability of that technology, as many crypto adopters and enthusiasts do, then hey, this is we're still early days here, and I think there's going to be a growing need for companies to transact in crypto currencies.
Guys, can I give you my thoughts on this? Because I thought, and this is why I wanted to bring up this story, because if you guys remember, one of the early promises of crypto was really like in the early days of paywalling news, right? And there was this idea that there was a potential future where if you want to read a news story, you could there could be some way of paying 2 cents, right? Some like extremely small amount to be able to read a news story. And this is how traditional newspaper publishers were going to make money online, right? Because they couldn't get people to buy subscriptions. And so it was going to be like some 1 cent or 2 cents that you pay per story. And over time, they make money on all these, forget about microtransactions, like nano transactions. And the problem is with traditional payment systems, it's just not feasible, right? Because you have transaction costs that are far greater than the 2 or 3 pennies that you pay for the story. And this is where crypto was touted as sort of the solution to all of this, right? Where crypto could allow for these extremely small transactions with low or no transaction costs, and therefore it all works. Is there a world, you think, where hardware starts, maybe to Lindsay's point a little bit, hardware starts to become offered as sort of like feature as a service in the gaming space? In other words, you buy a gaming headset, but if you want the 3D spatial sound, it's an extra $1 that you need to pay, right? If you want the plugin that does noise canceling, that's an extra $1. If you buy a Razer camera, to do filtering, it's an extra $1. Like where we start to get microtransactions like we have in games, but with hardware. Does anyone see this potential future?
I think you always will have hardware upsells. I think your point was actually an awesome one, and I followed you all the way up into the part about the hardware piece. Where I thought you were going to go was that they would use this network to make it such that all these games that are free to play can basically charge per minute, where it's like, oh, you want to play Apex Legends for 20 minutes? You pay like $3. You want to play it for 3 hours? You pay $8, whatever. I don't even know if the math just worked. But point is, you pay per consumption.
It could be. It's interesting. I like the idea. I've always liked Razer's sort of strategy around differentiating themselves and also moving away from hardware and trying to do more in services and infrastructure. So it'll be curious to see how they implement this and how they bring this to everything else they're doing. I am curious to see. Matt, let me just read this. Matt says, why get involved in crypto now, though? Not the best time for that industry. Matt, that's totally wrong. This is the absolute best time to get involved. I posted something about this today. When others are fearful, this is when you should be greedy. Crypto's not going anywhere. Now's the best time to be buying in because prices are back to normal and back to earth and very reasonable. and making investments now are where people are going to win big, not buying at the maximum hype. Now is when people should be investing. So I totally disagree with this. Interesting thought, but I totally disagree with it. All right, guys, I want to get to our last story here, and I have to do this because we are the most famous gaming chair reviewers on the internet, the most well respected, obviously. And here we've got a chair. I promise you, this one is totally different and worth discussing. This is a Kickstarter, and the headline here is Oculus Quest 2 gaming chair features a big D-pad for your feet. So there's an Oculus Quest compatible gaming chair over on Kickstarter, and it lets you kick back and run around in VR games using your feet. So what they're saying is moving around in VR is obviously a problem. It can be immersion breaking because you can't really move around that much. But this chair promises to boost immersion. It'll achieve this by adding locomotive controls to the chair's base, like a big D-pad for your feet. So spinning on the seat acts as an in-game 360-degree movement, so you won't need to deal with any weird tank controls, etc. It'll reduce most motion sickness, etc. So let me just, for those of you who are watching, if you're listening to this after the fact, unfortunately you can't see, but I'll play the little video here so you can see what this thing actually looks like to use. I'll fast forward here, but you can see the way they use the D-pad and the feet controls to both move around, look around, and move forward by pressing on this sort of D-pad on their feet. Curious what you guys think of this, because mobility is one of the big, unresolved technologies, if you want to call it that, with VR and anything metaverse. Do you love this gaming chair, or are we all buyers on this one?
I'm laughing at Chris's comment.
No?
I like the idea of incorporating feet. I mean, the feet are the last bastion of gaming. There's not many games that incorporate your feet. So I think, they could play a mean game of DDR with this.
Lindsay, go ahead.
I really like this, but for a different reason. And I actually was thinking along the lines of what Chris said, as we get better and better mobility experiences, I actually think it'll really help in development of game accessibility for a lot more people and accessibility in general in the world. Like I think that there's a lot of potential here to actually improve wheelchair mechanics if game developers start building products like this, which I think is a really cool and unintended crossover. So I like that this is being worked on for several reasons.
I mean, you have to have feeling in your feet to use this, right? Because of the D-pad there. So I don't know if there's, I guess there's some crossover, but I just think this is really lazy the way I'm looking at it. It's like they have existing VR tech where you can go on like those omnidirectional treadmills and things. And someone was like, nah, I just want to sit, and not do that. So that was my take. Again, I think we're all right and we're all wrong here, but I just think this is lazy. And I would get kind of dizzy spinning around in a chair in all these directions, but I'm also not, I think the tech is really cool. I think it's really cool for video games to have this type of experience, but it's not what I grew up on, and it's probably nothing that I'll adopt anytime soon.
I mean,
I'm the
Jimmy,
here.
I'm with you on this one in the sense that the article talks about solving the immersion issue, which they're right? The problem statement is correct. VR has a bit of an immersion issue when it comes to mobility, because mostly in most games to move, you just sort of teleport, right? You don't actually move your feet and walk or run from location to location, and that can break the immersion. But your point is spot on. This doesn't really solve that, right? Because we don't walk by just sort of pressing forward on our toes. I mean, that's like it's not how I move. I don't know if it's how you guys move, but it doesn't really solve the immersion issue. So I'm not 100% sure on this one. Matt says yes, it's back, referring to the gaming chair. It is. Eric says gamer sups. Eric, I'm not sure what you're referring to. You'll have to let us know. Chris says taking investment capital for wheelchair simulator in the metaverse. I mean, it does feel a little bit like that, but it definitely doesn't solve the immersion issue. It's cool. It's one of the rare ones where I don't think I'm a buyer on this. Chris says DDR equals dance recliner. It's a good one.
I like
Lindsay?
the spinning more than I like the rotational abilities more than the foot abilities. I think that's
Yes.
more of the key technology here. Like the foot thing, you're right. I couldn't see myself playing a game where I had to run and sitting down. That doesn't make any sense. But I think that playing a game where you can sit down and see all around you is pretty cool.
But it's funny you say that, because I thought when I first read the headline that this is where this, before I even saw the image, that's what this meant. In other words, imagine yourself sitting in a chair and you kind of just run with your feet in place. You know what I mean?
Which is weird. Yeah.
Which is like brushing up against sort of the D-pad. And I thought that's what it was.
Paul, have you ever ran?
Not once.
It's not my favorite thing to do, no.
To be fair, me neither. I haven't ran since college.
But I see that I don't think this is going to work, unfortunately. I wanted it to be great, and it doesn't seem like it really fixes any of the real problems. Guys, that brings us to the end of this show. I will say, please give us feedback on the time. Thank you to everyone who showed up at this new time. It seems like almost unanimously everyone likes the new time. We'll try and keep the show also closer to an hour, I think, so that people can sort of make it a webinar, sort of like a weekly webinar that you do as part of your workday if you're on the East Coast or the West Coast. Yannick, before I get, let me read Yannick's comment. It says, did they develop that chair because people don't want to stand up while using Oculus? That seems what the chair is for. That Oculus standing up was just too much effort. But as I was saying, guys, feedback on the time, again, from everyone, really appreciated it. Really appreciate it if you give us your feedback on the time. We're going to continue this, I think, one more week, keep testing it out, see if you guys like it. Unless there's major backlash or people tell us they really don't like it, I think we're going to keep it at this time. Definitely going to look into having the guests come on after, because the new time's a bit earlier and maybe more manageable for guests. So do it as a real after show. I think that'll be fun. And just want to thank everyone for coming. Again, next week, it'll be at this same time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. Definitely stay tuned for the podcast with Knut this week. Really great episode. It's going to come out this week. And make sure to follow Business of Esports everywhere, on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Twitch. Everywhere you can get our content. We put a bunch of content out during the week, and we hope you guys love it. Make sure also subscribe to Meta Woman and Meta Business. Sorry for all the reminders, but got to plug the shows. There's great content coming out of Lindsay and Jeff every single week as well. Guys, don't forget the most important thing, the future is fun. We will see you guys next week.